The corner tang knife is definitely a mysterious knife. There's a lot of questions into how it was hafted, what was the kind of intent and purposes behind that sort of blade. More importantly, was it more of a utility tool or strictly more ceremonial because of its uniqueness? Let's travel back in time to about 3,500, 4,000 years ago. A flint napper in the central Texas region picked up a piece of stone, decided to nap some sort of bifacial blade out of it, and then instead of putting those notches kind of at the basal portion, he took his biface and in kind of that corner area, drove out two little notches representing the corner tang knife. Why put those notches in that corner? A lot of collectors, nappers, and archaeologists believe that it was hafted into some sort of handle. Now I can tell you from experience, that small little hafting point is not a strong point, it's likely to break. Doesn't mean it wasn't possible, but there have been no hafted corner tang knives recovered. And after conducting some research, painstakingly large amount of research, came across this book, this article that referenced a corner tang knife shaped into the form of kind of a tomahawk, recovered in 1950 after a wagon train attack by some Native Americans. Now, things weren't jiving with me in my brain, and as I looked into this and started looking in Google and reaching out to some folks, my first question was, were there still Native American attacks on wagon trains? The last Native American attack on a wagon train that happened in Colorado, because that's where this hafted corner tang was recovered, was in 1865. So 1950 to 1865, there's a significant 85-year gap in between those two. And that attack on that wagon train, but this attack by the Native Americans in Junesburg was really in response to the Sand Creek Massacre that took place a couple months before. So to find a corner tang blade that was used in a wagon train attack in 1950, because that's exactly what it read. As a matter of fact, I'll read it. The only known example of a hafted corner tang knife was a back knife attached to a split oak handle. The blade was tied with rawhide thongs and strips of sinew. This hafted corner tang knife was picked up in eastern Colorado in 1950 after an Indian attack on a wagon train. The knife or tomahawk-like weapon is currently in the collection of an individual who remains in Texas, and I'll keep that name kind of quiet. And as a resident of Colorado, I had to do my due diligence, and that last major attack by Native Americans on a wagon train was 1865, January 7th in Junesburg, Colorado. So that is not really a clear picture. So then I started to look into a little bit more research and say, are there any other examples of corner tang knives, how they were hafted, specifically hafted into a form of wood? I couldn't find anything. I found a lot of best guesses, some sketches and simple drawings, but there was nothing definitive as far as a form of recovery. Now there has been some archaeological research into recovered corner tangs. There's been a little edgeware analysis specifically around that tang portion, around where it could be hafted, and they have found things like asphaltinium, which is kind of a type of natural asphalt-like glue that you could use to have something in there. They have found remnants of rawhide, but there's kind of a wear where these two notches are taken out to actually half. It's not definitive, but that can mean a lot of different things. But there is a lot of speculation how this blade was used, how it was hafted, and what was the overall kind of approach to putting those two little notches to make it that corner tang knife. Now this is a corner tang that I've napped. And this is an old corner tang. This is one I've napped probably about 10, 15 years ago. And even when I first learned about corner tangs, these notches instantly stood out in my mind as a method of connecting the hand to the blade utilizing some sort of leather thong or leather tie. And with that idea in mind, I made tons of corner tangs and used them in butchery. Now there's many folks that might agree with that approach, and there's many folks that might go more of the hafted approach into some form of wood. But when you think about the simplicity of the blade, it makes sense that it was a butchering or kind of a everyday tool, whether you're cutting plant fibers or butchering some sort of meat. A lot of collectors in the state of Texas and Oklahoma and even Arkansas find corner tangs. It is very likely a piece that was traded throughout the area. It was also something that was used in ceremonial practices. There have been some corner tangs that have been recovered that are much larger in scale. They don't show any sort of wear or use on them, but serve more as a ceremonial sort of blade. They've been found in burial sites among young children and their parents. Those bigger blades makes sense for a ceremony. If it was a tool they used in the everyday, it might serve them well in the afterlife wherever they may go. But a lot of the corner tangs that are recovered throughout the state of Texas, specifically Central Texas, they're not the biggest. Sometimes you can find them between 3 to 4 inches up to about 6, 7, or even 8 inches. But the question remains, how was it hafted or how was it used in the hand? This is that example on how it was used in the hand. This is the corner tang that I used in my last raccoon butchering, and I've used it on several bison. And I can tell you from its starting point, it was much bigger, and this is now its kind of final shape after having used it for a couple years. This is that leather thong that exists attaching to the actual 2 notches. Nice big loop, put your hand in, wrap it around once, wrap it around twice. More importantly, as you're using the corner tang to cut fibers, cut meat, you can let go of it. Retain the blade on your wrist, remove meat, pull up roots, do anything you need to do with your hands, then flip the blade back up into your hand, put it back into action. I can tell you this is probably one of my favorite butchering tools next to a cutout blade when it comes to butchering game. It's kind of a hands-free device. I don't have to worry about losing it. And more importantly, it's so simple in design. I could sit here, have a conversation, forget that it's on my wrist, talking to a buddy about our next hunt, our next kill, whatever the case may be, flip it up into my hand, get back into action. Now, do I think a quarter tang, even of this size, would have been hafted by some sort of stick coming off at an angle or even something riding straight? Absolutely not. It is a very weak haft point. If I'm gonna haft a blade, I'm gonna wanna have some sort of stem. I'm gonna wanna have some sort of stock up on the blade where I can utilize its center point to make those cuts, whether it's butchering or processing some sort of plant fiber. This, when hafted with some sort of wood and even glue or even a form of raw hide or sinew, can work. It's not going to give you the results. If I'm going to be able to use a blade to cut meat, I want the most stock on it, I want the most leverage, because you can't think of every sort of game processing as a rabbit or even a deer. You have to think of larger animals. A lot of these are found in bison butchering sites. It makes sense how it was hafted, how it was utilized, and the importance of it. Not everything was hafted in a form of wood. The hand blade and the simplicity of creating it was the #1 goal. So we're gonna make a corner tang knife, as always, with traditional tools. This is a copper-free zone. No judgment for those that do use it. I just prefer to nap in the most traditional form possible. So let's make a corner tang. Yummy little flake. One thing when I nap is back and forth between, different stones and different billets. It's really just based on what I'm looking to do to set up a platform or kind of do some trimming, but you don't have to go stone, 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 and then billet, and then just flaker. You can go in between any one of those depending on what it is you're trying to achieve. So I've got this little chunk right here, just kind of sitting down, looking to raise it up. Instead of whacking at it with my billet, I'll just come to my stone, pop it up, remove that little bit of mass, raise that edge. It gives me a little bit better platform after some abrasion. Throw a flake that way. There we go. Broke up in the hand. No big deal. Here. All right, so we have the overall blade. I'm gonna put a notch here and a notch here right on this corner of this blade. Now the unique thing about corner tangs is that there was a lot of different shapes. There were straight triangles, There was elongated kind of blades. So it kind of gives the user, kind of in my mind, the ability to adapt it for their needs, their hands, so to speak. Notches. Corner tang. Should be good enough. Not bad. Let's tie it up. Piece of buckskin. Just gonna half this out. Put a little hitch in there, right over my corner, and pulling tight. And it secures just like this. Kind of measure it how I want it to fit around my hand. Nice. 1 wrap, 2 wrap, and my corner tang is good to go. This method of attachment makes sense when it comes to utilizing a tool for really doing anything, even sawing. But I imagine I would want something to fit comfortably in my hand. If I'm the user and I'm going to spend a day doing a variety of tasks, I don't want something so long that it's hard to manipulate. I want something that's going to fit nicely in my hand. It's not going to be cumbersome. It's not going to prohibit me from doing the tasks that I'm looking to do. I have no doubt they could have been hafted. Anything's possible. It's the hafting of the actual corner tang that kind of remains a mystery. Personally, I think it's already been solved. It makes sense. Why is it there? And I think from an experimental archaeology standpoint, for somebody who's butchered and cut and scored and scraped and all these things with corner tangs, that is the most plausible, and it's the most kind of common sense approach dealing with a corner tang knife like this. Bottom line, the corner tang knife was very likely used by late archaic people 3,500, 4,000 years ago and earlier as a multi-tool knife. Fit around the wrist with a nice little lanyard of buckskin or some sort of plant fiber. Used to process plants, used to cut roots, probably score, snap, and process trees. Definitely a butchering tool. It's all based on the edge wear analysis and the archaeological evidence that is, found at different sites. Very, very likely it was hafted, some sort of lanyard, some sort of thong to keep it on the wrist so that everyday user could complete everyday tasks. I will put this blade up in my store. That's right, I've started a store in 2025. I have all manner of stone knives, stone resources, all my books. You name it, you can probably find it on there. I'm gonna include hides and gourds, and all manner of stuff that you little savages can use for your kind of primitive skills adventures out in the bush. Check out my store. I will be posting this one in there. It is first come, first serve. I'm gonna try and keep it stocked as much as possible, but there will be times where I'm gonna have to turn the store off because I'm heading out in the bush for a good chunk and I won't be able to manage it. You can find it at DonnyDust.com. It's only my homepage and then my store. So feel free to take a gander through there. All right, see you in the bush. Thanks for watching.